Excellent. Welcome, 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 everyone. My name is Pendo Galukande, and I'm so delighted to have you all again to one of our webinars. I feel like sending you all a virtual hug. So if you just touch your heart, you'll feel it there. If I could hold all of you, I would. That is how much I enjoy our times together in our community. I'll be introducing the topic, and then I'll introduce one of our panelists, and then just run through a bit of housekeeping things before I then turn over to our guest presenter. So our topic today is happy wife, happy life. It's actually a question. Is this the truth for men? Is it that if their wives are happy in marriage, that they too will be happy? If you've been following our webinars, we started with forgiveness in marriage, and that my passion really was that we would have access to the knowledge, the wisdoms, the therapies and theories that are making marriages work, and that we wouldn't have this information just as professionals, but that anybody who is involved in a romantic relationship or marriage can access this knowledge and make a difference. That if they die of something, or if the marriage dies of something, at least let it not be that they didn't have access to information. We wanted to take that one out. Let it be other things. So we've been at this since 2021 during COVID, and have handled many topics, trauma, grief, all that and all that. And along the way, we had some interesting conversations, and Ronald was a part of this, and we'll go backwards when I introduce him. But one of the conversations we've had after implementing a marriage workshop was the guys were like, this is a bit too much. The emotional part is too much. We don't come at us directly. Give us some time before you take us into deep emotional experiences. And the women also are saying, but I can't get through to him. And we thought, well, maybe this is a topic that as we continue doing this work, this is a topic, can we stop and pause and linger here and understand? And I was so excited to find that Dr. Timm gave me additional insights into how to understand men. I think in the therapy practice, many times it's very easy to understand female folk, and I know I'm painting with a very broad brush stroke, but many of them come in and they tell you exactly what they want and what they want to work on, and the guy is usually sitting there a bit silently and not complaining very much, and you think maybe it's the woman that's in pain. But with time, we've come to understand that the guys also have pain and express it differently. And so we're going to be delving into that. And right now, I want to introduce very briefly, but I'll give him a chance to also introduce himself, Dr. Ronald Asimwe. Ronald and I met shortly after COVID, and just realized that we were of the same heart, completely of the same heart. And I was starting to veer off marriage and family and going into counselor education and supervision, and he grabbed me and said, look, I think this is, I think you're going the wrong direction. I think you're a marriage and family through and through. And he linked me with Michigan State University. I'm following in his footsteps. He is my mentor. He's getting me into research and things like that that I wasn't really thinking of. I can't say enough good things about Ronald. He's very, very generous and is raising an entire army, I would say, of marriage and family therapists on the continent in Uganda and Kenya so far. So welcome, Ronald. You can introduce yourself a little bit more.
Oh, Pendo, what can I say after all that introduction? Thank you. I'm humbled and honored, and thanks for having me here. This excites me. Hello, everyone. My name is Ronald Asimwe. As you can tell, my accent is a blend of Banyankole and Bachiga. If the name is lying to you, I'm a mix of both. Um, my mother is from the central Uganda, Muganda. My dad is from Ankole, so I like to joke that I'm a Mugamunya Ankole. Currently, I live and work in Minnesota, specifically at the University of Minnesota, where I work as an assistant professor. I think in the Ugandan context, we say lecturer. My primary roles include teaching undergraduate and graduate students. I'm a trained marriage and family therapist, and I had the honor of doing my PhD at Michigan State University, where our guest speaker comes from and where Pendo is going right now. It's currently attending. I'm a researcher. I love couples and families, and I primarily study many things, but I primarily study trauma in intimate relationships, and I look at when trauma is involved in relationships, how does that affect the various family processes? So, parenting, how couples relate, and overall family and relationship outcomes. Under that huge umbrella, I'm interested in really finding out there's this big term that you use, research-based interventions that have been proven to work in various settings, whether that's in the US, the UK, and around the world, and some even in Africa. Particularly modalities that work with couples and families. I study one modality called emotionally focused therapy, which I'm sure when you interact with Pendo, you have learned a little bit about attachment and emotionally focused therapy. My passion is to really introduce EFT practices in the African settings. So I lead a group of EFT professionals, and we have done trainings in Uganda with the Uganda Counseling Association. We were recently in Nairobi, Kenya, for the first ever EFT training, big one. And so the work is growing. So many professionals that are interested in working with couples and families that are experiencing trauma, marital dissatisfaction, and various many other mental health problems. So that's my passion. I live in the US. I like to joke that I live in two worlds. So I'm here probably May to August right now. I'm in my house in Budo, Kampala, Uganda. So if you're wondering, I'm not over in the US like Tina, but I'm here. And then I live part of my life there. So I have two homes, fortunately. Thank you for having me. I look forward to this conversation. Pendo and I go back, like she said, and when we met, we just connected on so many levels, but how we just viewed relationships and emotions for men and women. We go back and forth in those conversations, as you hear from our conversation today. But glad to be here and really excited to hear your questions and from our guest speaker. Tina, thanks for being here. We can't wait to learn from you as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. So glad to have you here. So glad to be doing this with you, Ronald. Ronald will be handling the Q&A. So we'll have Dr. Tina speak for about an hour, and then we are proposing to shift from the webinar format to a meeting format where we'll see faces, hear voices. We really like to connect with attachment therapists. It may mean that you have to log in again, and I suspect that panelists, your panel login will not work. So we may, before we shift that, put a link so that you log in as a participant and everybody will have video and voice. In the meantime, we ask that questions are put in the Q&A box. And if you want to ask your question anonymously, there's a drop down and you just say anonymous, select that. Otherwise, we'll assume that it's okay to read who's asking the question. The chat will be used for just conversation, you know, responding and all that. And we have Ronald, myself, Dr. Simon Chizito, who are going to be engaging with you in the chat so that Tina can focus on giving the presentation. Yeah, and after that, we will, have the Q&A, really engage. I hope you brought your questions. And now I'm going to introduce our guest speaker. So our guest speaker is an associate professor in the School of Social Work at Michigan State University in the USA. She's a clinical fellow of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. And she's licensed as both a marriage and family therapist, as well as a clinical social worker. Her research and writing focuses on couples and families with an emphasis on issues related to sexuality. And she has over 30 years of clinical experience, is a frequent presenter on topics related to intimate relationships, sex therapy, affair recovery, and trauma-informed treatment. Welcome with me, Dr. Tina Timm.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction. And I can certainly add that the connection that Ronald felt when he met Pendo was evident when I met her as well. That she has that heart and that soul that once you start talking and you feel her passion for this work, you're like, yeah, you just, when she asks you to do things like this, you're like, of course I will. Because you can just feel the energy and the commitment to helping people to navigate this incredibly meaningful and simultaneously really difficult thing that we call relationships and marriage. So I don't think there's much more I want to add to the, I mean, I guess there's the intro was kind of the professional side of my life and how I got to be where I am right now. I think I'll add just a couple of personal items perhaps to contextualize and humanize myself a little bit. I am married. I will be celebrating, we'll have our 22nd wedding anniversary next week. And we share 6 children together, and they are all very active and doing wonderful things. 3 of them are launched, 2 of them are in college, and we have 1 still at home. And yeah, like Pendo, I have a lot of passion for working with couples and helping them to figure out how to connect even after painful things like affairs and all the various things that can go sideways in relationships. So I'm going to share my my screen here. I also want to acknowledge that doing a presentation like this is incredibly difficult because we have a lot of research out there about what works. And I went back and forth after agreeing to do this about what to include, what is most important. And quite frankly, you know, I'm going to share the presentation, but I'm looking forward to the question and answer part of this because, you know, there may be things that feel really important to someone on the call that I could, that I have lots of information about that I didn't put in the presentation. And I like that part of the connection that we can make, that it can be more specific to something that people are wondering about. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen, and we're just gonna verify that in fact, Pendo, do you see the presentation without the notes?
Yes, I can see it. And in case you're wondering, we have 72 people on and growing.
Awesome. That is so exciting. So we are going to be, I love the title that that Pendo decided on, the happy wife, happy life. I think that's bi-directional for sure. And that energy that goes back and forth between people creates that happy life. It isn't just in one direction, of course. All right, now why? There we go. I was trying to figure out how to advance it. So we got a pretty straightforward agenda today, not a lot of time. I'm going to try to pack in as much as I can and really protect that question and answer. I'm going to do a brief introduction, cover some of the most important things that I think we know about research on relationships and emotions from some of my favorite theories. I wanted to make sure you walked away with some like concrete skills that you could implement today even. So I made sure to put a slide in about that. And then of course, we're going to have the question answer. So from what I understand, I mean, obviously both Pendo and Ronald are trained in emotionally focused couples therapy. And I think there's been a whole presentation on this previously, but I virtually cannot start a conversation about the importance of relationships without talking about attachment and how as human beings, it is literally hardwired into us to want to and need to physically and emotionally need to be connected to other human beings, both in primary relationships and within community. And if you look across decades of research, you will find like study after study after study that shows the importance of that. Everything from the research that we see with infants who are, growing up in orphanages where they're provided physical care. They've got the food they need. They've got the clothing they need. They're physically safe. If they don't have physical touch and connection with other human beings, they will not thrive. And some, in fact, will perish because that connection is so important. Some of the latest research that we can do where we can actually put people into imaging machines where we can watch what happens in the brain gives us physical evidence of the importance of good connections. And we can measure what holding the hand of a loved one actually does inside of our brain. So, maybe you've seen images of brain scans where they light up with different colors, and we can look what the brain looks like when it's just at a resting state. And then we can kind of prompt someone to think about something that was scary or hard in their life. And then we can watch all the areas of the brain light up in those reds and oranges and yellows that say, whoop, 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 we're thinking scary things. And then have them think of a time in their life where they felt connected and safe and loved by someone. And when you prompt them to pull that up, that memory, that feeling, that connection, even without actual physical touch, we can just embody that memory. You can watch on the screen that the brain settle back down into a resting state and calm the brain. Like that, it's just amazing to me, the power of this type of connection that we're trying to foster. So in the literature, there's a variety of different terms that we kind of use to embody that feeling of someone who can be safe to us that way. We might refer to it as a secure base or a safe harbor. It is the person that is our go-to, right? It's the person if we have something exciting happen that we would want to tell first. If we were feeling scared, it's the person that we would want to comfort us. And that's the kind of connection that we're trying to foster in good, long-term, intimate relationships. And when that is compromised, the good news is that there are very active things that we can do to learn those skills and to foster that. And some of it starts with obviously education about what that looks like, what that sounds like, and what we're shooting for. So it's you know, there's a little acronym. We have acronyms for lots of things these days, but it's easy to remember. ACE, AC. I spelled it wrong. Not ACE, ARE. Sorry, typo on the third slide. I'll have to fix that. But it stands for accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement. And those are, you know, pretty generic words. You might have some sense of what they might mean. And so I don't have to define them per se, but the next couple of slides, I'm not going to ask you to fill this out, but it is from a questionnaire that looks at these three really important components in a relationship. And I'm going to kind of talk you through them. Pendo didn't mention, but this slideshow that I'm using today, I will send it to her. Sounds like she has a list of people that registered today, and it will all go out to you. So you don't have to worry about taking notes or writing these questions down. We'll all have that in your inbox after the fact. The A of this for accessibility. And again, kind of think about these questions as I'm going through this in terms of true or false. Is this, from your viewpoint, is your partner accessible to you? For instance, can I get my partner's attention easily? This is something that I have on the list of specific skills later, but I'll give you a heads up about it here. Every day, good relationships, they make something called bids for attention. They can come in small ways, like, hey, did you see that news article? Or, you know, just little reaches like, hey, I'm, you know, touching base with you, or I'm sharing information, or I saw something that you might be interested in. They can be bigger things like, my heart is, I'm feeling sad about something. Can we talk about it? It can be bids for attention, can include sexual initiation as well. So we want partners to be noticing those and be responding to them, right? And the word easily in here is important. Like, we don't want to have to ask 10 times. We want to be able to do that first, like, hey, I need you for something, or I want to tell you something, or I want to share something with you, and have the partner like look up from what they're doing or stop what they're doing momentarily to say, I see you and you matter. All right, my partner is easy to connect with emotionally, right? Can I share? Can I, do they share with me? Can I share with them? Are they accessible in their emotions? Again, more to come on how to think about emotions, how to access those, and there's more to come about that, because, you know, I think the part of this, that one that I don't love is it easy? No, sometimes it is not. Connecting with our own emotions isn't necessarily easy. All right, my partner shows me that I come first with him or her. Another important component to a relationship. Do you feel like, you know, out of all the people in the world, that your partner's gonna care about you, what's going on for you, put you first over coworkers, parents, you know, other people in their life, that, and not on every instance, because that's contextual, but like, do they have your back? The fourth one is, I'm not feeling lonely or shut out in the relationship. Again, you know, that's an important component, that you don't feel lonely. And then this last one related to accessibility. Can I share my deepest feelings with my partner and he or she will listen, right? The ability to be vulnerable, not just about those surface level things, but what's going on at a deeper level. All right, so responsiveness. This is then what we do. This is kind of the behavioral piece of connection. From your viewpoint, is your partner responsive to you? If you need connection or comfort, are they there for you? My partner responds to signals that I need for him or her to come close. That one's a tricky one for me, in that I also encourage couples to not do what we call mind reading, right? I want my partner to just know when I need something and be able to give that to me. I'm a big fan of, like, hey, if I come home and I have a hard day, and you know, my partner would have no idea what happened during the day, that I would say, hey, I really need a hug, right? I really need to spend a little time talking about what happened today. So again, this one's kind of related to, if the partner asks, making sure that there is that responsiveness there, as when, if they do ask for it. I find I can lean on my partner when I'm anxious or unsure. This next one is super important. Even if we fight or disagree, I know that I'm important to my partner and that we will find a way to come together. Can you answer that? True or false, right? You know, fighting is hard. It does disrupt our equilibrium, and we do feel like, you know, we don't feel as settled. For some people, there's a term in therapy, like, when we feel our partner pulling away, whether it's because of a fight or a disagreement, or that we can't reach them, or they're not responsive to us, that it starts to evoke that really primitive, what they call primal panic, right? That person feels so important to me that if I can't feel them, or if I can't reach them, it kind of hits that part of my brain that makes me think, wow, I can't, like, I'm feeling so scared that my very survival feels like it depends on it. You will often get that. And again, one of the things that I think is incredibly unfair when people fight is when they just, like, suddenly storm out and say, I'm generic things like, I'm out of here, or I can't do that anymore. That kind of statement leaves someone often feeling very unsettled. Like, what does that mean? Are they just done with this conversation, or are they done with the relationship? Are they coming back? And if so, when are they coming back? But, you know, good, strong relationships know we can get mad at each other, we can have disagreements, and we always know that we can make repairs and we will find our way back to each other. The last one in this category is of responsiveness is, if I need reassurance about how important I am to my partner, I can ask for that and we'll get it. This, again, I know this talk is not specifically on fair recovery, but this is a huge one that I work on with couples who are who have experienced that kind of hurt and betrayal. That for the person who was hurt, if they say, oh, I really need you to reassure me that you love me, that you're not going anywhere, that you care about me, can you ask for it, and can you give it, that reassurance about that? All right, and then this third category is called engagement. And again, this has behavioral components to it. And I want you to think about these true and false questions and whether or not they're true for you in your relationship. Are you positively, emotionally engaged with each other? I feel comfortable being close to, trusting my partner. I can confide in my partner about almost anything. I feel confident even when we are apart that we are connected to each other. I kind of love that idea of an invisible string, right? No matter where you go, you know your partner is out there thinking about you, wanting good things for you, caring about you, and there's a connection there. I also, one of my favorite thing about long-term relationships are those really unique things that tie couples together based on their experiences, their kind of a shared language or an inside joke that they have that no one else in the world would understand or get, but the two of them do, right? an inside sense of humor, or a look that they can give each other from across the room, and both of them know exactly what the other person is thinking because they know each other that well, and that there's that connection there. Couple more. I know my partner cares about my joys, hurts, and fears. This is one that I think is a very actionable thing as well. We stop in long-term relationships. Sometimes we stop asking those more fundamental questions about what brings our partner joy. What is it that's on their list of things that they dream about, that they want to do? What are things that are happening in their life that are hard right now? And if they're not talking about them, we're not asking about them, that's when we get more and more distance and disconnection in relationships. All right, and then lastly, I feel safe to take emotional risks with my partner. So again, you'll have this list. I think it's good for us to kind of go through and take an accurate assessment. You know, this is kind of about how well do we think our partner might be showing up for us, but I want people to think about this list in terms of your own availability. Are you doing this for your partner? Are you creating an environment where your partner can comfortably answer true to these types of questions? All right, so that's kind of a good foundation of like on my wish list of what I want relationships to embody and strive for. So that's kind of a grounding in the importance of attachment, and that comes from, you know, theories related to that emotional connection. But I can't do a presentation without talking about one of our premier marital researchers in the United States, and his name is Dr. John Gottman, and he has studied relationships longitudinally for over 40 years now. And he has some of the best research on what helps couples to have positive long-term relationships. And so the next couple of slides are going to be talking about some of his most important findings related to emotional connection in relationships. And in general, one of the things that he has found is that well, the physical relationship is important, and I'm a sex therapist. I'm going to be the first person who champions that part of the relationship. Having an emotional connection is 5 times more important than the physical connection. People have to feel safe with each other. They have to, you know, embody those characteristics and be able to say true to those previous slides that I just showed you. People, you know, everyone's wired differently, and I try not to fall into too rigid of gender stereotypes about this, but particularly for women, like they might be able to have sex with someone, but it will be more disconnected if they do not feel that emotional connection. They can kind of make a choice like, yes, I can go ahead and do that. But to really be emotionally present, they have to feel all those things, not all of them, but those characteristics that we're talking about. Now, here's where one of the active things really matters related to this research. And John Gottman talks about marriage masters versus disasters. And I always think it's interesting when we can take like math and apply it to something as complex as relationships. But when he followed people from early in their relationship over time, and he looked at who stayed together and who didn't. What were the characteristics of the people that stayed together and had successful relationships? What were they doing that the other people weren't? And so when you actually look at the ratio of what they were seeing in observational research of these couples, what you'll find is that there is what he calls a magic ratio. And the ratio is 5-to-1. And what that means is that you need to be actively putting energy into the relationship, and that there need to be 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative, right? It doesn't mean that we can't make mistakes, and it doesn't mean we can't be irritable and we're going to get it wrong. And sometimes we're going to, we're going to make those mistakes. And I am the first person to see everyone as human, right? But we have to be counteracting that in that lopsided way. Like, yeah, we can be irritable once and maybe a little short-tempered, and then we need to circle back and notice the good things that they're doing, compliment how they look that day, appreciate something that they've done, give, physical affection, and go back and make sure that we're piling on the positive. Related to this, it's the thing that explains, like, sometimes people come into therapy and there'll be something pretty small that might have happened that day, and it just blew up. And sometimes both people are confused. It's like, yeah, in the overall scheme of things, it wasn't that big a deal what happened. But the problem is, if this ratio is reversed, or heaven forbid, even worse, of negative to positive, what it does is it kind of takes that relational bank account down into the negative. And when that relationship is running in the negative, those kind of relatively small things suddenly become very big things, right? So when we're doing this ratio and doing it well, then we kind of build up a nice big balance in our relational bank account. And then a little withdrawal, a little, a mistake or something that happens. Yeah, it takes a little withdrawal, but there's so much positive already built up that it's kind of inconsequential. And the same exact event or behavior or statement that you make, it's suddenly not a big deal at all, because we've already done enough things to like counteract that and build positive sentiment in the relationship. And it's easier to give someone the benefit of the doubt and say, yeah, I know they're having a hard day and they didn't really mean that. Of course, they still love me and care about me. And I can, respond with kindness instead of negativity. So we got to put energy in. And it's, I know one of the most fundamental things that I want for couples to be doing when they've neglected their relationship for a long time and they're feeling really disconnected is counteract that by doing things that they used to do things that you would do if you were courting, things that you would do if you were dating, right? You spend time thinking about that person and actively doing things to let them know that you care for them. And that's the kind of neglect that comes into relationships, and people just think, the relationship will be fine if we just coast. And that's not the case. Coasting leads to disconnection because people stop sharing, stop feeling like the other person cares what's going on with them. All right. Checking our time here. Just a little bit more about John, Dr. John Gottman's work. He has identified 4 things that are both in isolation and certainly in combination contribute to the ending of relationships or complete disconnection, where people just stop caring, stop investing, stop trying. And so I'm going to just review those really quickly. And some of those you might be familiar with already, but they're not necessarily in order. And certainly the more of them you embody and the more of the 4 you're doing, the more difficult it's going to be for your relationship. So criticism is when we go after or attack our partner for who they are and their character. This is very different from saying there's something about their behavior that you don't like. A classic example would be related to things being messy around the house, for instance. Like, you can ask for a very specific behavior that you would like to see changed, like, can you please wipe off the counters after you do the dishes, right? That is a very reasonable behavioral request that you make. Criticism is, you're so lazy, you never wipe off the counter. You're so messy, you don't pick anything up around the house. So when you start going after someone's character, it's harder for them to hear. It hurts more, and it's usually harder for them to change, right? Because it feels like they're saying it's all of you. Second category is contempt. Contempt comes in lots and lots of forms. This is a big category, but it's anything that you might do in the relationship, both verbally or non-verbally, that dismiss that person or disrespect them in some way. It can be eye rolling. It can be turning away from them when they talk to you. It can be calling them names. Certainly verbal abuse is contemptuous and falls in this category. Physical, putting your hands on someone, and any sort of violence is can be contemptuous as well, because it's disrespectful. So it is corrosive to relationships to be contemptuous in these ways. The next category is defensiveness, and this is a tricky one, especially when someone comes at you with harsher, harder startups. The first tendency that a partner has is to want to back away from that and say, that's not fair. You're not taking this into consideration, or what about this? Or they want someone to know the context, or I didn't mean it, or they want to kind of tell them every reason why that's not true. And that leaves the person who is trying to tell you something, they end up feeling unheard, unseen, uncared for, and it breaks down the communication. And where do you go from there? If you say to someone, this thing happened and it hurts me, and someone comes back with, but I didn't mean it, or you shouldn't be hurt, where do you go from there? No connection, no closeness. There's not a lot of traction that you can get from that. The final category is something that he calls stonewalling. And stonewalling can happen in kind of smaller ways, and then it can happen in a more universal way when relationships really get to that far end of the continuum. But it's basically like not being willing to engage anymore, right? And it's a reframe that I often use for couples when I'm working with them that don't like the intensity or the fighting. I do let them know, like, you may not like the fighting, but you've got a lot more to worry about when someone stops fighting. Because when they stop fighting, sometimes it means they stopped caring to even try anymore. And when they stop even caring to engage or fight for the relationship, then, the relationship's at a pretty further extreme of disconnection, and it's harder to come back from that. So this can happen in that more universal way, but it also happens on a, even in individual conversations, when someone says, hey, I need to talk to you about something, and the other person just says, I don't have time for that, or I don't want to do that, or I don't think that's important, or the conversation starts and you don't like the direction that it's going. You don't agree with what they're saying, but you don't have good conflict resolution, and you just say, I'm done. we're done with this conversation. And that's a form of stonewalling as well. I do want to be really clear that this is different. And I think, yeah, the next slide, we're going to talk about, you know, regulating emotions and ways that we can do that successfully. That this is different from purposefully taking a break when things get too elevated. I'm actually a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of either person kind of noticing, wow, we're starting to yell at each other. I know I'm not being clear in how I'm communicating. I can't hear you because I'm overwhelmed. And one or both people saying, hey, we need to take a break, right? Kind of an adult timeout of sorts, and say, let's go do something else. Let me get my body calm. You get your body calm, and then we'll come back and we'll try to have a conversation again. That's a skill. That's a relational skill to say, I'm not calm enough to have a productive conversation. Let's take a break and then try again. That's not stonewalling. And if you want to take a break in that way, it's good to ask for that and to do that in clear, connecting ways. I care enough about you and this relationship and this conversation that I want to do it well. So let me go calm down, and then let's try again. So very different. We can do that in healthy ways. We can do that in unhealthy ways. But I think you get the picture. The more of these that we're doing, the more destruction that it potentially causes our relationship. Okay, so this is a big bucket in the therapy world of something we call affect regulation, which is, okay, we've got feelings in there, little feelings, big feelings. What do we do with them? What do we do with them inside of ourselves? And what do we do with them between people? And I think I wish I had data to support this percentage that I often use with clients. It's more of a clinical intuition that I have over the years, but I put about 80% responsibility on an individual to be able to regulate what's happening for themselves internally. And then we use that last 20% as the relational piece, where of course our partners are going to be helpful in that, in helping us to feel calm and in showing up for us. But the relationships that I see get really unhealthy is when one person is having all kinds of big feelings, whether it's anger or sadness or whatever it is. They don't know what to do with that themselves, and they look to their partner to fix it or make it better. It is the partner's responsibility. Like 80% of it is the partner's responsibility. What they're supposed to do, what they're supposed to say, how they're gonna help that partner to feel regulated. And I'm like, ooh, no, we got to get that adjusted. So related to the part that's internal, that I put individually, that responsibility that I put on someone, is the skill of being able to listen to what's happening inside of yourself. That's, how are we experiencing things in our body? Is our heart beating fast? Is our palms sweating? Are we feeling nervous in our stomach? What kind of thoughts are there, right? Are we saying mean things to ourselves? Are we having extreme thoughts about what's going to happen or what our partner is thinking or doing? Those are all related to emotions, and it is our job to be recognizing that. And it is, partners who are attuned will sometimes recognize, like, hey, you seem a little quiet. What's going on? They will recognize it first. And that is an opportunity for someone to say, to kind of sit quietly and say, what is going on? What am I noticing inside that's happening? So, so we listen inside, we try to make those connections, right? When I have this thought, what feeling is that connected? When I have this sensation in my body, what feeling is that connected to? And well, that might seem really straightforward. It's actually not. And people, adults, in my experience, get more and more disconnected from their feelings over time. There's a variety of different reasons why that happens. Some grow up in families that kind of intentionally teach them to disown or to disconnect from feelings because they don't like those feelings. So you get confusion inside. Like if your heart is beating fast, what feeling is that? There's not just one feeling that does that to us. Our heart beating fast can be excitement. Our heart beating fast can be fear. Our heart beating fast can be sexual arousal. Our heart beating fast can be uncertainty. Like the list goes on and on. So it's a nuanced thing to be able to really sit with that and say, what category is this in? And then allow yourself to be vulnerable and share that with a partner. Yeah, this is what I'm noticing, and this is what I think it's about. And or help, see the partner as a safe enough person that you can process that out loud and say, yeah, this is what I'm noticing. This is something that happened today. Maybe those two are connected. I'm not sure. But like not just ignore it, not shut it down, not keep it to yourself, but let it be shared. And I also want to acknowledge that in order to survive in this world, which is full of uncertainty, full of scary things that are happening, full of unpredictability, full of hurt, like we have ways internally of just kind of taking feelings that are hard or vulnerable and saying, I don't have time for you today. I have to work. And you just kind of put it over there and say, I can't, I can't cry. I'm working right now, right? And that's a useful skill that our minds allow us to do. But I'm saying that when it is safe, when you're not at work, when you go home and it's safe and you're with your partner, that's a time where we go back and we kind of invite that back in and say, now is an okay time to talk about those. With this person, it's a safe person to talk to about those things. And we don't have to stay numb. We don't have to stay checked out. We don't have to continue to dissociate. We got to bring those back in. All right. Obviously, part of this is to be able to connect to yourself and authentically be yourself. It's not the feelings we wish we had. It's the feelings we actually have. It's not who we want to be, who we want to be. We might want to be someone who's never experienced trauma. We might want those things, but in fact, like it's a part of how you're wired. It's a part of the life experiences that you've had, and we've got to sink down into how we need to be authentically ourselves. And then lastly, and again, this is a whole presentation in and of itself, like learning what works for you to calm yourself if you get elevated in a conversation, or before even trying to have a conversation with your partner. Like, do you need to do some deep breathing? Do you need to take a walk? Do you need to do some self-talk? Do you need to jump in the shower? Do you need to go for a run? I mean, what helps like your physical body to get in a place where you can process information in appropriate ways? Again, lots of brain science behind that, right? We know the more overstimulated and overwhelmed the body feels, the more we just we just stay back here in the most primitive part of our brain that only thinks about survival, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? It only has simple options, and it doesn't allow us to go up here into the parts of our brain that can balance emotion with reason, that can hear someone else's perspective, that can do all the fancy brain stuff that we want to do. So we got to get our body calm so that we can do some of these more relational things. All right. So affect regulation, or what we also call co-regulation in the relationship, is the partner showing up in a way that we can listen to what the partner is saying and stay in a curious place. And one of my phrases that I love and I try to teach couples is simply, tell me more about that. What else do you want me to know about that? Asking more questions. This is a particularly hard thing to do for people sometimes when what they're coming toward you with is something that you might have done that they're unhappy with. And even then, I want you to, as much as possible, like get that defensive part to stand down and say, tell me more, right? We have a saying in the field that the problem is the path, right? Instead of like not listening to what the person is saying, see that as the place that's going to lead you exactly where you need to go. Pushing it away isn't going to get you there, but saying, wow, if I just keep asking more questions, they're going to let me know more about what's happening with them, and there'll be there's a point of connection in doing that. All right, the relationship also has the power to regulate our bodies emotionally and physically. So we know that holding, when a partner holds us and we feel safe, and this isn't just with partners, this is the stuff that goes way back to infant attachment. There's a reason why when a baby is upset and you take it into your arms and you hold them close, that their body calms down and they feel safe and they feel like someone is showing up for them, and it physically calms their body. Our relationships have the ability to do that as well. Now, it's interesting because some people, when they're in an elevated state and their partner says and comes and tries to hug them, they will push back from that. And that's a complicated space, because sometimes they're their body is in an activated place already, and that physical comfort isn't something that's gonna feels like it's gonna help. It actually feels like it's something that's gonna amp them up more. So obviously we want to check that out with the partner and say, hey, is it all right if I sit next to you? Is it all right if I put my arm around you? Do you want a hug? Do you want to lay down and cuddle? Do you what would feel good to you? And then lastly, in this category, I want people to be able to sink into a place where they embody this mantra of say what you mean and believe what you hear. So when we're trying to have good relationships and we're trying to build connection, we're not wanting to get stuck in that loop of not believing what our partner is telling us. If they say something, we're both, making a commitment to like be vulnerable, listen to what's happening, share in authentic ways with what they're experiencing. And then, it doesn't feel nice when somebody does that in an honest way, and then their partner it hits kind of a brick wall and they say, well, I don't think that's true, or I don't believe that, or kind of to be honest, speak your truth, and then believe what you're hearing from the other person. All right.
Lost you for a second. I don't know if it was just me.
Oh.
Your sound is back though.
Okay. Oh, I hope it's gonna stay. I've got two, yeah, I think two more slides. I'm almost getting there. All right, so one more incredibly important thing about emotions that I want us to be thinking about as we become more emotionally intelligent and try to connect with our partners. And that's this idea of you know, I don't love just categorizing them into hard emotions and soft emotions, but you'll hear some of that language in what I'm talking about, that it is so common that what our partners see externally on the outside, what they hear from us and what they see from us, are those more reactive emotions or those harder emotions. They see frustration, they see anger, they see irritability. And those are easy, you know, kind of things that happen in a flash. And those are often there to protect us. And so one of the shifts that I try to help people to make is to be mindful of that process and know that behind those feelings, behind what's being behind that anger, for example, like, be willing to take a look at what potentially is being protected underneath that or on the inside that your partner isn't able to see, and give voice to that. Give voice to the more vulnerable, softer feelings or emotions. And those are the feelings that often, especially when relationships are feeling disconnected, that they don't feel as safe to come forward or to be seen. And they can be connected to pain within the relationship, ways that you've been hurt in the relationship, or, you know, for some people, they come into marriage or into relationships with trauma from the past and unmet needs and, you know, ways that they didn't get their most fundamental needs met. So essentially what happens is that, yeah, you've got parts that feel unlovable or rejected or feel uncared about, and those are all rolling around in there. But all your partner might see is that you're mad, right? So, you know, if, I don't know, sometimes it helps to do more specific examples. If, you know, I mentioned in part of my introduction, you know, my wedding anniversary is next week. So if that comes around and my husband were to forget our anniversary, right? Not acknowledge it, no card, no gift, nothing. You know, he might notice by the end of the day, I'd be withdrawn and be irritable. I might be shorter with him.
Ronald, have we lost sound or is it just me? Oops.
Yeah, I think we've lost her. She's coming back.
Okay. And Winnie, is that a raised hand? I can give you a chance to say so, to ask your question as Dr. Tina comes back. Winnie, if your hand is raised. Okay, Dr. Tina, are you back?
It's trying to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, are you there?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we're here.
Sorry
Oh my
about that.
goodness, I don't, yeah, it kind of looked like it kicked me out. All right. So
We don't have
yeah, I just,
on.
one more slide. Is that I'm not seeing the screen share anymore. Is that the true on your end as well?
Yes, on our end.
Okay.
The slide's gone down.
All right, let me just see if I can get that back. We're almost done.
Two people have
All right.
raised hands, but we'll take them once you finish, I think.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I don't know where where we lost the connection there in my example, but all I was saying is that if my husband forgot our anniversary, he might start seeing these more reactive emotions on the outside. Me being, more irritable, feeling angry, maybe being more snappy with him. But underneath that, the softer emotions that would be there would be things like sadness, rejection, feeling uncared for, feeling unseen, those types of things. And what's going to be more effective in having a conversation with him, if I can get to acknowledge, identify those softer feelings and be able to say, yeah, I'm feeling really hurt because you haven't acknowledged our anniversary. And then it's a really important decision point for him about how he's going to respond to that, right? If he's going to come back with a defensive response, oh, well, how busy I've been, how stressed out I've been at work, or, and dismissing that in some way, the connection isn't going to be there. If he comes toward me and says, oh my gosh, of course you're feeling sad about that. I want, and make amends for that, and says, I totally want to celebrate. And of course, this day is important to me. And of course, that matters to me, that you are feeling sad that we haven't done anything to celebrate that. That's going to bring us closer together. All right. Last slide. This is the skills one, and I'll make this brief. I definitely don't want to eat into our question and answer. So quick things that we can put on our to-do list related to connection and emotional vulnerability. Get those daily check-ins going. If you can't do it every day, at the minimum once a week, where we sit down with no distractions, with no phones, with no TV on, and we have that conversation where we fully listen to each other and have a more meaningful conversation about things that are going on with the relationship, things that are going on with us in our lives, and ways of connecting and showing your partner that I care about your world. I care about what's going on inside. And is there anything that I've done this week that you've liked? Anything that you would have liked more of? Is there anything that you want me to know that hurt our connection in some way? The second one is a homework assignment that I often give couples, which is pretty straightforward, but incredibly powerful in building up that relational bank account. So each person makes a list of 10 things, 10 specific behavioral things that make them feel loved, right? And again, specific and behavioral. These are things that the partner's going to know if they do them or not do them. It's not like, make me feel loved. It's specific things like kiss me before you leave for work in the morning. Give me a foot massage, make my coffee, compliment me on how that I look good, very specific things. So then we share those lists with each other, and you make a commitment every day to do a minimum of one thing off that list. So your partner sees you and feels you actively in putting energy into the relationship. The next one, it's actually a two-part thing. It's a 6-second kiss or a 20-second hug. And this comes straight from John Gottman's research. And it's related to, you might say, well, Tina, why a 6-second kiss? Why not 3 or 4 or 5? 6 seconds is the magical medical moment when our body actually releases something called oxytocin, which is a feel-good hormone. It's a hormone that is actually designed to build connection. And so that's one of the ways that we can purposefully kind of feel that connection with our partner. And it isn't just a peck on the cheek. We've got to stay with it. 20-second hug or 6-second kiss. I already talked about this turn toward earlier in the presentation, that when our partner reaches to us in some way or makes a bid for attention, we very intentionally turn toward them physically and emotionally and engage with them. right? That's opposed to, and I'm not going to go off on explain these other two, but that's as opposed to turning away or turning against. Turning away is not acknowledging it. Turning against is an angry response. Why do you want me to look at that? I don't want to talk about that. I don't care about that. You know, that's not important to me, those kind of things. And then lastly, this is related to this previous slide, is, you know, how do we practice this emotional intelligence, which is like on any given experience or interaction, you might notice those really reactive feelings that come up, and we're looking at those and identifying those, but then we're going under them and we're saying, what else? That's true, and that's true, and looking at what are the vulnerabilities there, what are the softer things, and being able to share those with a partner. And, you know, the thing I kind of, another visual that I use with clients is when we share a vulnerable experience or emotions, it's like we're kind of taking our heart and we hold it out to our partner and we say, here's something really soft and important that I need you to know. And when we do that, when we hand our heart to our partner, we want them to hold it gently and with care and kindness, and we want the response to respect the sacredness of doing that, right? And so it's a skill that we can learn, right? And then, yeah, lastly, I think you're probably getting this message all along, that I very much see both love and connection as being an action. It's a verb. We do things to keep it strong. We don't just get married and expect our relationship to be fine if we neglect it. It's a daily maintenance, just like, yeah, taking a shower and brushing our teeth and, you know, taking good care of our bodies. We have to take good care of our relationships. And hopefully you can see that we have a lot of research that gives us pathways to what that would look like, what makes for a strong relationship. And we can do actionable steps and behaviors and skills to learn how to do this better and to put that energy into our relationship in a way that keeps it strong. All right. Questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can, I think Ronald maybe is taking a look at what's happening in the chat or the Q&A, and Pendo and Ronald also said that if that I could take a stab at questions, but they're also stepping into that space and using their wisdom and knowledge as well to field questions.
Wow, wow, wow. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Tina. I'm sure if we had the microphones on and everything, everybody would be clapping. Thank you, first of all. Even when you just started the introduction, just humanizing yourself, I was like, definitely the right person for the job. Thank you. You've delivered over and over. I enjoyed the starting with attachment and just bringing us back to some grounding of that. The questions, I felt them. You know, I was like, if Moses was right here and I was, you know, he was assessing me, I felt, you know, how vulnerable that feels to be. To ask, am I actually responsive? Am I, you know, does he feel safe to take risks with me? Do I make myself available? Thank you so much for helping us to understand what's happening when a partner gives you a hard exterior, what protecting, what vulnerabilities. Thank you so much. And I want to hand over to Ronald, and I also want to change us to a meeting instead of webinar so that we have some questions fielded live. But I don't know if I will jinx anything. So I want to first of all put the link in chat just in case we get disconnected, that everybody will be able to connect again. Do you all see the link in there?
And I wonder, is there a way to transition straight from here without
That's what I'm
moving?
hoping. I'm hoping that that's what I plan to,
Uh,
you know how it goes sometimes. So that's why I
yeah.
wanted to just make sure we have a plan B in case we get disconnected.
What will happen to the questions in the chat then? Will they
Oh, okay.
disappear?
Should
They
we
probably
save those?
will if the meeting ends. We won't be able to get them anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I will put up, I'll give a microphone to some of those who will want to answer questions or to ask questions. So you go ahead and start. And if people put up their
Please,
hands,
yeah.
I will give them, microphone. So you can call upon some of the people afterwards.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Timm. That was incredibly amazing. As an attachment enthusiast, I was just smiling when you talked about ARE and really diving deep into um, the ideas of emotional vulnerability. And I think that's a subject that's, we've been engaging in here with the professionals in Uganda, but also in Kenya. And some of it, the cultural context around emotions and gendered roles around emotions. And so it was interesting to hear you kind of dive into that. I was tracking the questions, and I love all these questions, and I'm here wondering, where do I start? So, Pendo, I don't know what's the best way to do this. FYI, I'm a novice at webinars, but I'm going to read out a question and then I will share what I think, and maybe the two of you can contribute whichever way.
Mhm.
None of the questions seem to be directed directly at you, Tina, but they are really good and they talk about some of the things you addressed in your talk,
Good.
which was really amazing.
Yeah. And if there are
Yeah.
questions that are related, you can combine them as well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so the first question is somebody asked, how do you deal with being judged or judging your partner in a relationship?
Mm.
It's a great question. I was taking notes here. It's always tough, but one of the things that I think about being judged really is the first thing that comes to mind is really to first one take care of myself, and pause and take a deep breath and reflect. Okay. The second piece I think about as I'm reflecting is to take that curious stance and asking myself, what does it mean that I'm being judged, and where is this judgment coming from? I think sometimes it's very quick for us to blame when we feel judged. When I feel judged, then I'm very quick to attack and blame my partner. You do this and you do that, and that never solves anything. So one of the things I've learned from my personal experience, but also from my professional work, is that encouraging people to take a curious stance and go deep and think about, what is it doing to me? Where is this coming from? Um, I like to teach people to reframe it for themselves. And then after that, of course, I'm working under the assumption that the relationship is safe. Then you express it to your partner. Um, and this is how I like to talk about it. Hey, when I hear you say XYZ, this is how it felt like for me. I'm curious, where is this coming from? That's a curious stance, right? Um, you notice I'm not saying, hey, when you say these things, you annoy me, and but I'm coming from a curious stance and saying, when this happens, X happens to me. I'm curious where it's coming from, right? So I'm stating how I feel, but also I'm curious because I don't know where you're coming from with your judgment. Does that make sense? So that's really the framework I work from, starting with just don't take it personal, take a deep breath, reflect, reframe it for yourself, and then express it to your partner. And in cases where the relationship is safe, i.e., people feel secure with one another, the conversation always goes deeper. And I've had partners say to each other, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know what I did was doing this to you," right? Or what I said. Sometimes we don't even know, or we're not attuned. I love Atina, you talked about attunement. Our cultures and our upbringing sometimes don't teach us to be emotional attuned. So we don't
Mm,
even know how we show up to our partners. We just, we learn to say things, we learn to sometimes joke about things, but we don't know how they land to the other person. So always taking a curious stance to also um, understand the other person is very important. I love one of my mentors, Dr. Paul Giller, always says, whatever you do and whatever happens to you, find your empathy. Always find your empathy.
mm,
So
that's
find your empathy for yourself, but also for the person who you are judging, but also you feel judged by. Find that empathy and be curious, because empathy leads us to curiosity. Judgment leads us to blaming and criticizing, of which Tina, you also talked about the Gottman's work around the four horsemen. I think that's brilliant. When we are in a judgmental mind, then we're not helping ourselves, we're not helping our partner, and we're stuck in that negative cycle of criticism and anger and frustration and other things. So I will stop here. That's my take. I don't know what my two experts are thinking, Dr. Timm and Pendo.
Um,
yeah,
sorry, go
uh,
ahead.
yeah, the judgment one is is really tricky because, you know, sometimes our partners say something that isn't meant to be an attack, but we hear it as an attack. We hear it as judgment, right? And so there's that dynamic that sometimes the filters on our ears read a lot more into something. It could be a pretty benign comment that someone made, that you're saying I'm a bad wife, you're saying I'm a bad mom, you're saying I'm, this, and that's actually not what they're saying. So there's that willingness to take a look at what comes up for you that you feel judged, even if it might not be meant that way. And then there's a whole nother category where like someone could feel judged because the partner is coming and saying, you did something that hurt me, like genuinely has hurt my heart. And that we would want to, even though that hits a vulnerable place inside and we might feel yucky about ourselves that we have hurt our partner, and that doesn't feel good and we want to just push it away. That's a place where, Ronald, I really appreciate what you said, like how do we stay engaged with that and stay in a curious place, stay in an empathic place, and say, tell me more. What do you want me to know about that? And trying to show up for our own parts that feel scared that we've made a mistake and don't feel good about who we are, because maybe we want to, do better. But really grounding ourselves in, my partner matters and they're trying to tell me something and I want to be open to that. And even if it's hitting those vulnerable places in me, I want to show up for my partner. They're saying I hurt them, and that's important. So yeah, Pendo.
Yeah, I was just thinking that um, the skill that we are asking for people to have, for me, seems like a meta skill, like a really high skill to have curiosity when someone's attacked you or judged you. And I just thought back to, because these skills are new to me as well, 4 or 5 years of practicing. And still, when I'm attacked or judged, most likely I'm going to attack back. And I'm just thinking, that 9 times out of 10, it's the pursuer who 9 times out of 10 happens to be a woman that's going to attack the guy. And many times guys will keep quiet, stonewall, withdraw. And they may go quiet and not even realize what is happening for them, and not even be able to say that was an attack. But I think that before we get to this place of curiosity, I think that there are some micro skills before that. And the micro skill is to realize that you feel hurt. You
Yes.
feel hurt. And if you can just somehow verbalize that, find a way to give that, admit it to yourself that this hurt. When you say this, it hurt me. I heard you say that I'm lazy. What I'm hearing is you don't think I am intelligent enough, or I am, and those are the pains that I feel a lot of guys are bringing into therapy when they feel like their intelligence is being questioned, when they feel like they're, capable, they're being seen as incapable of maybe
Mm-hmm.
running the family or providing. And the pain is there, and I think being able to connect with your pain and bring it back instead of shutting down or going away, to turn towards and to be able to say that, I think is the next thing. And as we progress, at some point, you get to a place of curiosity. What was
Mm-hmm.
happening for you when you attacked me or when you judged me? But I think the very first one is to even notice that you're in pain.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you can see how there's entry points and things that can be changed on both sides, right? The other thing that the literature talks about is the importance of what they call a soft startup, right? So instead of doing the attack, the you always or you never or I can't believe you did, you know what I mean? Like that harsh judgment, that the person who's bringing the thing that forward does that in a softer way and says, I owning feelings and saying, I feel scared because this happened, or I feel hurt because this happened, instead of the attack, right? But yeah, I agree too that, yeah, just telling someone who's been attacked to be curious, that's a big step,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Especially when it
Yeah.
really hit places within them that feel vulnerable.
And I like how Pendo you put it, the micro skill. It's I see it as actually the biggest skill to start with yourself, because yes, Tina, you're right. When we're attacked, we immediately want to attack back or defend ourselves. But taking a slow step and saying, "This is how I feel right now. This is how I'm showing up." And as a guy, Pendo, what you said, I can relate to that. Is some of it could be cultural, but I feel like in our cultural context, and in our cultural context, meaning Uganda, Kenya, Africa, is that a lot of us men, at least in my own experience, I remember being very shocked by how either interactions would happen, and I would hear messages like "boys don't cry," "men don't cry," and we grew up internalizing such messages. So immediately, I don't even realize, oh, this is how I feel in this moment. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
very good skill to think about, starting with myself and saying, when she said this is how it landed for me. This is how I feel, right? And then go from there. Love that. All right, so we have so many questions. Thank you both. The second question is, how do you deal with a situation where a partner is not ARE, i.e., accessible, responsive, and engaged, the fundamentals? Wow. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so a couple of things that I thought about, and then the two of you can chime in here again. Um, Again, starting with yourself, because I think sometimes and I can also speak from a personal stance, is sometimes I find that I tend too much to look at the other person, right? So I'm saying they are not showing up for me in this way, they are not being accessible, they're not responsive. And then I ask myself, do I do that for them? And so maybe again, micro skills, starting for ourselves, because I'm noticing in this question, and maybe it might sound judgmental a little bit, but it's like I'm noticing the other person is not accessible. And for me, it's landing as like I'm really constantly watching them and they're not accessible while I'm trying to be accessible to them, right? And so again, for me, being curious and starting with myself. Okay, this is how I feel every time I come back from work, and I try to talk about how my day was. My partner is either watching something on TV and doesn't seem attentive to me, right? And that's a pattern that's gone on for quite some time. Noticing what that is doing to you is very important. Good starting step is that notice what it's doing to you. And sometimes I find that when we notice what it's doing to us, then we want to do more, thinking that the other person gets it. But this is why I like the second level of curiosity, being curious and bringing it to this person, rather than running away. Bring it to this person and say, I notice when I try to get your attention, um, you seem absent or you seem not interested. I learned this statement way early on in my training and practice, and I teach it to my clients. Help me understand where this is coming from. Help me understand, and I don't really feel it. Help me understand. I notice when I show up at home and I'm tired and I want to talk to you, you seem busy, or you seem, sometimes I don't use the word disinterested, because, sometimes that can seem like an attack. You seem busy, you seem maybe preoccupied. Help me understand. Assuming again that the relationship is safe, the other partner will be receptive. If not, then it might not be, the partner might not be receptive, and then defensiveness might happen. And so I think about starting with yourself. How is it landing for you? And then taking it to your partner. And the third is the obvious one: seek some professional help. Go to a pendo, and let's talk about it, because it's important to realize that as partners, we're always dancing. We are in emotional focus therapy. We talk about the interactional cycle, that we all have different ways of showing up to each other. The classic terms are pursuer, withdrawer. Oftentimes, the person who is noticing that the other partner is not, ARE, tends to be the pursuer. Hey, because pursuers are always saying, see me, I need to know that I'm important, right? And when they don't know that they're important, then they find ways to look for it. They're noticing cues and interpreting cues every time. And so to know that we each show up in different ways, and try to understand each other from that space, but starting with ourselves. This is what's happening for me when I feel you're not present, and then take it to them. And maybe I recommend seeking professional help. What do the two of you think? Pendo and mute.
Oh,
I want to share with us a map. A map that will help you to know where you are and hopefully where you need to get and how to get there. So according to attachment, we are told that we need to connect. This is where Dr. Tina started us this evening. We are wired to connect to another person. When that person is unresponsive, in our brains, the message we get is you've been left for dead. You start to feel a pain of loneliness and disconnection. So I'm assuming whoever's asking this question, that you are experiencing some distress. And I think it's important to understand that your pain is valid. That is real pain. Your brain actually activates for a certain hormone to be released that causes physical pain in your body. And it's very traumatic to be with someone that's not responding to you, that is not accessible to you, that is not engaged with you. So I want you to, the first thing is to understand you are in some degree of distress. And a lot of women, again, I'm using a broad brush stroke, sometimes it's the guys, but many times women come and say, my husband is not responsive to me. So your pain is valid, it's real distress. It is what will happen in an attachment relationship. And I absolutely agree with Ronald. Express that pain. Start by expressing that pain. And if your partner isn't available to you, seek help, get therapy, and deal with it. And you may need to upskill yourself with vocabulary to describe what you're experiencing. And some words, I've tried to throw out some words. I'm in pain, I'm in distress, I feel lonely, I cannot reach you, I'm not getting through to you, it hurts. This is the language of attachment that we haven't had in the past. At least I haven't had it in the past, to find a way to communicate what I'm experiencing. But it's a serious thing, and it's important to take the time to find the language. And if you can't convey it verbally, then write a letter to your partner to explain that you really are in pain.
I love that. I love that. Because it is a very, very painful place to be.
And thanks for the
And
validation. I think it's also always important to validate ourselves. So thank you,
mm,
Pendo, for starting there. I want to give you a simple skill that I like to think about, and I teach people. It's called do, think, feel. So when my partner does X, notice what do I think, or what is the meaning I'm making out of this? Whatever it is, how do I feel, and what do I do? If if you're taking notes and you're thinking do, think, feel, that's also another good place to start at, to think about whatever the interaction is. Whenever you feel your partner is not showing up or is not responding, what do you do? How do you feel? What are you thinking? And then professional help will be really, really ultimate, either for yourself or for you as a couple.
mhm.
All right, so we have more questions. So somebody said, Dr. Tina, on your 5-to-1 magic ratio, they love it. Is it wise for one partner to pay attention to investing in positive interactions in the relationship while the other is not bothered or distracted? Or is distracted? Is it wise? That's
Is it, say it again, is it wise to pay attention?
Yeah, is it wise for one partner to pay attention to investing in positive interactions in the relationship while the other is not bothered? I think it's somewhat related to the previous question on this partner is, ARE and the other is not ARE.
Mhm,
This is more on, like one partner is paying more attention to the positive interactions, the other does not seem bothered or is
mhm.
distracted. The question is it wise? So probably yes or no.
Um, I kind of go back to what Pendo said. It can be a painful space to
Mm.
be the one in the relationship that notices more and that cares more and that maybe appears to miss the connection more. Um, my professional opinion is that it's always wise to pay attention to that energy that you're putting into the relationship and maybe the energy that your partner isn't, and to be able to have a voice about that, and to not just disengage and turn and be numb. I think that there are a lot of consequences emotionally and relationally to just deciding to do nothing and just live with the status quo. So, sometimes I tell people, like, because they're trying to decide, like, do I put energy into this relationship if my partner isn't meeting me with equal and opposite care and awareness? And I think that, yeah, I want people to be able to not sit around and wait, like, oh, I'll do it when my partner does it. Like, put your best foot forward, work on yourself, do that work that you need to do. And then we go to our partner and say, look, I want a relationship that has these qualities to it. Are you willing to come on this journey with me? And to ask for that. And again, it's a really painful thing when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and ask for what you need or what you want more of, and the partner isn't willing. And that's a place of reckoning in some regards, right? Then do we need professional help? Can I continue to live with this in the current state that it's in? Because if you repeatedly come to your partner and say, I'm hurting, I need more, we need to work on this, and it's a no, it's a no, it's a no, you're faced with some really painful choices of just shut down and continue to protect yourself to live that way, or to potentially end the relationship if someone's that unwilling to see you and to feel and to do anything about it. Yeah. But it starts with like being brave enough to ask.
Christina, do you have any thoughts? There's more questions that are related to that. There's one that's, how do you know that your partner checked out? How do you make your partner emotionally connected? What do you do where a partner spends more time with his mates than he does with his wife? So again, going back to the partner is not attuned, the partner is not responsive, they're not available emotionally. I think some of the same insights you shared or we shared here can be applied here.
Mhm.
Pendo, any other
Actually,
thoughts?
yes, I have some thoughts. I'm going to go on my instinct and gut that this is a question that many women are asking. What do I do? My partner seems not bothered, distracted, not present, going out with the guys. And say that this not bothered is actually, in many, many cases, not true, that they're not bothered. I don't know if you remember that slide that Dr. Tina shared, where this is what you see on the outside, but what is really happening on the inside. So Dr. John Gottman, who we've, listened to quite a bit about him today, he did tests on married couples, and they were taking, I think they would sit on a chair and they'll take your pulse as you seated on that chair. And many times when the conflict would be ongoing, the man's pulse would increase, would shoot up. So that physiologically, they feel like, maybe they're going to explode or something's going to happen. And they had to now focus on bringing themselves back to a place of calm. So they're putting on this unbothered look. On the inside, their physiology is not able to take any more conflict. Whereas for women, our physiology goes a lot longer, slower. We can stay on this conflict for an entire day and we are managing the pressure. But for men, the pressure would go really high, really fast. A lot of men have been told very early in life, you cannot feel, you do not have the space to have these vulnerable emotions. And so they've been traumatized in a way, not being able to show the vulnerable side. And so that flat thing that you see, that stoic, that wall, is actually just a cover up for a very, very sensitive inside. A lot of men have told me that if I showed, it would be too much. I feel so much pain. There's just, it's too much for me to know how to handle it. The easiest thing for me is to just shut down, close down. Don't give her a hint that I'm hurting this much. So that's why we are saying get professional help. Because there are times when I think that in our culture, we take a long time to seek professional help. And this is fine. This is how things have been. But I think times are changing. There's a lot more access to marriage counselors now. Seek professional help because we are trained in how to rope out that person that is behind this wall, and to bring them back online, to get them to actually make sense of that very painful interior, to make sense of what their body is telling them and what their body is telling you, to decode this disinterest, this distraction, and the sort of distance that they're creating with their bodies, with news, with work. All those are just symptoms, mostly symptoms of trauma, a traumatized person who hasn't had the loving relationships that enable them to be a full human being emotionally. And they have taken that emotional side and, hidden it, locked it up in a cupboard, and they have no clue how to deal with it. So many, many times, I think that more times, maybe 8 out of 10, you're dealing with that rather than a person who really has no heart. I don't think you'd have fallen in love with a person who has no heart. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
I love that. Absolutely love that. yeah, that assumption that gets made about what that flatness looks like is can be completely inaccurate, and that there can be a whole lot going on there that they don't know what to do with. And even to the point of like, and it's not that they're not willing, like sometimes it is so profoundly disconnected that they're actually not able to even, they don't know what's happening inside. It is just kind of feels numb and dead and disconnected. And like, if you ask someone, how are you feeling inside? And they do that scan, they're like, I got nothing. Right? It's not that they're not willing to tell you, it's that physically and emotionally, they have put it that far off to the side because culture has told them that, or experiences have told them that that's just safer.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah.
There's another question here about, does childhood trauma or neglect or lack of a safe space contribute to violent behavior when feeling unsafe in an adult relationship? I think the quick answer is yes, because what trauma does to our brain and our functioning is it just shuts us down, and this we'll talk about, the big T traumas, but we'll also talk about the small T traumas, is that trauma just, shatters our emotional world for the most part. And so we don't learn to show up in more vulnerable ways and in safe ways for other people. But it's important to remember that however we show up on whatever we do in an adult relationship, that's what we learned, and that's the template we've been given. And that's why, to Pendo's point, I like, seeking professional help, because we are all in this business of untangling what we learned, learning new ways of being and showing up. And so, yes, childhood trauma or neglect, this contributes to violent behavior in a relationship, because that's what trauma is. It traumatizes us and it teaches us to, not that even it teaches us willingly or unwillingly, but when you're traumatized, you learn that the world is not a safe place. And so most of the ways we show up, whenever we feel attacked and we've been traumatized and we haven't worked on it, they safe ways to fight back and want to protect ourselves. Or another safe way is to shut down. And so, yes, it does contribute a lot. A lot of the work that I do and people that I see, it's a lot of childhood trauma. And this is why attachment work is so important, to go back and ask ourselves those questions and reflect on our upbringing and the things that we wish we would have had and didn't have, and the things that we had or that we learned that are maybe not helpful to us as adults, and we need to abandon them and take on new ways of showing up for our partners. So yes, 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 trauma or neglect contributes to a lot of violent behavior. I don't know if my colleagues would say otherwise.
I absolutely agree, and you're the one who studies intimate partner violence. I think that when we are traumatized, especially as children, we have these conclusions about ourselves that I'm unfortunate, I'm not liked, and these pains live within us. So it's easy for somebody to trigger you to anger, because they're touching that place of I'm not liked, I am not important. And the energy of the anger just comes up in your body suddenly. This is what we call dysregulation. So I think that in our culture, in our Ugandan culture, so many of us are living with untreated trauma, with these live wounds, and this combustion of this energy coming up, and then us finding ourselves in violent situations, whether verbally or physically, is really common. And again, my appeal is to us to start to upskill ourselves, understand what trauma is, be able to see that there's something not right here, and seek help. I'd like to just mention, though, that we've run over time, and I don't know if Dr. Tina has the time, but perhaps we could release those that need to go, and then those of us who are able to stay, continue with the questions. Ronald, what do you think?
I think that's fine. I'll have like 10 more minutes. These are lovely questions. There are other questions that most of the questions revolve around really the partner not being ARE, i.e., they are not um, accessible, responsive, and engaged. Um, yeah, so we can stay for maybe 10 more minutes. I don't know if Tina, you have
Yeah.
10 more minutes you
I
wanted to run.
I unfortunately I'm gonna have to jump off. I have another meeting in 10 minutes, but I need to do a few more things to prepare for that. So I'm not gonna be able to stay on, but I just want to say thank you for the invitation to share information today, and to all the people that joined us. Thank you so much. I love that you are wanting to learn new skills and to connect with your partners in more meaningful ways, and to honor the pain that may be there and learn ways of handling that in healthier ways. So yeah, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tina. Thank you so, so much. And as you can see, the questions that are coming really, people are engaged with whatever you've presented, and we will try and continue handling.
Yeah, yes,
But I
finish
appreciate
answering a few more of those, because they really are coming from a place of wanting more information and wanting to heal. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks, Tina. Um, okay, there's somebody whose hand has been up. I don't know
Yeah,
if you want
Nelson
to take the
Mwanga.
question. Do you want to unmute and
Yeah,
ask maybe Nelson?
yeah.
Please, if he has a mic.
Yeah, Nelson, I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
You're a bit
Can you hear
broken.
me?
Yes,
Pendo
we
and
can.
Ronald?
Yes, we can.
We can, yes.
Okay, so, yeah, sorry, my question I wanted to direct it to the
Oh
Tina.
dear. Now we
Unfortunately,
can.
she has jumped off, but
Now
it
we
is
can.
well.
Yeah.
I can share, and then we can see how to go on with it. There are two actually. Hello, you can hear me?
Go ahead.
Saying
Now
in
you're back. Yes.
relationships that okay, are we familiar with the saying that the people we love don't love us, and the people we love don't love us, and those we love, the people we love don't love us, and the people we love, they do not love us,
And then those that love
and
us.
then we don't love them. Yes, yeah. Where does that come from? And you being a relationship people, I want you to share your experience on that. Then the second one is closely related, but how come that in a relationship, a gentleman that claims to be so loving to the wife would be so sexually engaged with several people, to the extent of even the social circles of the wife. Like if any female friend is introduced to that person, before you know it, they have built rapport and this person is sexually engaged. But when the wife becomes so disgruntled, this gentleman keeps saying how much he loves the person, yeah, and doesn't want the relationship to go. No other instances of physical abuse apart from that regard. Yeah, kindly share as well. Thanks.
Wow. That's $1 million question, Nelson. Well, two of them. I haven't heard the first quote. I don't know where was that a book you read it from? Pendo, are you familiar with it?
No,
The
I'm
people
not.
we'd love. You do? Oh, okay. So I'm not familiar with it, unfortunately, Nelson. So my apologies if I don't give you the exact answer you're hoping for. Maybe you have some grace for me. Um, I don't know if your question is about like what are my opinions on it. I generally think human beings were very complicated beings and very um, Complicated is even an understatement. It's, you know, I think about the famous physics law that unlike poles attract and like poles repel. Um, to your idea of the people we love, they don't love us. I don't even know what to say because I think about like what are we calling even love? Like, what are we defining as love for this person? Maybe our understanding of love is different from theirs. Maybe they're also thinking that they love us, but we don't interpret it that way. And maybe if you're asking in the context of maybe this is your partner, maybe it would be important for you to have that conversation with her. You know, you say you love me, but I don't feel the love, or like how you're understanding love. I don't know if that's helpful, but to that comment or quote, I will say just those few words. To your second question, it's very, very heavy. There are so many. Um, so how come someone will say they love their wife, but then they are sexually engaged with multiple other people, and when the wife tries to ask, they're very defensive about it? There's so many things that go on into this, and we can go on and on and on. And I don't want to sound very culturally insensitive, but I want to say that some of this really, I see a lot of this in our culture a lot, where, you know, and we fall into these labels of men want more sex and women don't want more sex. Women want emotional connection. But I do think that some of it, a lot of it, really our culture plays a big part in how we normalize that men. I mean, I think some of you understand Luganda, they say "Musajja tebambalira baana," you never count a man for children. In other words, the unspoken message that the man can go out and have as many multiple partners as they want, when the woman is supposed to stay at home and stay, you know, committed to the relationship. So that's a tricky one. I think from a culture standpoint we can understand it. Now the key question to ask is, for two people that are committed in a relationship, my encouragement to those two people is always have a conversation about it, because I think we get in a relationship assuming monogamy, right? And when we get in a relationship assuming monogamy and such a thing happens, that's obviously not a monogamous relationship. Some of you are familiar with the term polyamorous relationships. I know it's a little bit controversial in Uganda to talk about these things, but I actually think that a lot of our Ugandan men are very polyamorous in how they view sex. And so it's important for us, as I encourage my couples to talk about it. What are your expectations and what are the boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not? And then if somebody still goes on and does what's out of your boundaries, then maybe it's important to have a conversation about maybe we're not fit to be together. Now, I will not encourage people to do that, but for me, the key thing is to encourage people to explore what does really being in a monogamous relationship mean? Because I think we assume it. I think culture, religion comes into it. We assume because I'm married to one person, then that's the person I'm going to have sex with. But many people don't believe that and they don't practice that. At least from what I've seen with the guys that I've worked with and the guys that I've spoken to. And so it's important for you and your partner to have that conversation of what does monogamy look like for us. That's where I stop. Pendo, you have any other thoughts?
Thank you for this question, Nelson. Just really great questions. Again, I'm going to hold up the map of attachment. Attachment tells us that there are going to be two most common positionalities in intimate relationships. There's going to be someone who's pursuing, somebody who's looking for connection, initiating connection, and somebody who's distancing, sort of pulling away. And that pattern is almost universal. You find it everywhere. Once in a while, we find the withdrawer, pursuer, but 9 times out of 10, there's a pursuer and there's an avoidant. Now, it doesn't mean that the avoidant doesn't love the pursuer. They actually love them. But this is how they have been put together. It's just like you have people who are tall, people who are short, people who are open and quick to speak, and people who are quiet. When it comes to intimate relationships, this is how we are made. That one person tends to go for, and the other one tends to pull away. They both want intimacy. They both want closeness. So when you say the people who love us, we don't love, and vice versa, I think that this is somebody who has come upon pursue a withdrawal cycle and they're not understanding it. So when we now, as couple therapists, learn to read this, we help people to understand the language of your withdrawal, when they shut down, when they seem to create distance, what is going on for them? Can we give the couple the vocabulary to speak about what is happening for them? Because you may think that this is not love, that they don't love us, when actually they love you greatly. By the way, the avoidant, when you feel loved by them 1%, they probably love you 9 out of 10. But you're going to only feel a little bit of love. They're not as demonstrative. So that's one. The other thing that I think is that, just like I've said, that emotionally, many of us do not have the skill for intimate relationships. We seem to have the skill, growing of skills was cut off. It was truncated at a very early age. And so when we get to the hard part of relationships, we don't know how to rebuild, repair, and continue the intimacy. Our personal testimony, that's how I got to a point in my marriage where it was just, neck and neck, and really I'm not feeling the love. But I've learned now, and we are learning, to repair that and to continue to build intimacy, to see that, the person who's quiet is not unloving, they actually love. And then when you talk about the second question of just people going out sexually and they're no longer attracted to their spouse, again, I take that back to not being fully developed emotionally, not being able to express those deeper inner needs. And when we get to that place in marriage where we cannot get our attachment needs met, we're going to look elsewhere. You're going to think, I made a mistake when you go, but get married to that person, you're going to hit the same roadblock where you need to work through conflict and build intimacy. And then you'll say, I made a mistake the second time. Let me find another person. And it's going to be on and on and on. But really, I think it's a red flag. It's probably trauma. And I'm using the word trauma very broadly to say a cutting short of the development of one's emotional being. And when we don't have a healthy inside emotionally, we don't know how to get our needs met. We're going to reach for all sorts of things, substance abuse or other behaviors, or sex outside of the marriage to meet that need. Yes, there are people who are polygamous and all that, but the way I'm making sense of it as an attachment therapist is that if we haven't learned how to express our attachment needs and get them met legitimately, attachment needs cannot wait. Somehow you're going to have to replace that. Either you're going to overwork or overexercise or overeat, or there's going to be a hole that needs to be filled.
Thanks, Pendo, for always taking us back to the map of attachment. We'll take one more question because I think most of the questions are related to what we're talking about, and then we will probably close this out. So someone asked, how do you deal with a partner who's not expressive? They can't be vulnerable to you, neither can you, so all that is wrong happens and is often just ignored. And when you try to address it, they just can't help you because they're not talking back to you and their behavior is not improving. So you're basically just in a cycle of hurt. Wow. It's a powerful question. Around the same theme where we're talking about attachment, Pendo did a great job of summarizing the fancy pursuer withdrawal cycle. It's important to notice that this is the pursuer kind of stance of pursuers are always noticing what needs to change in the relationship. So I'm noticing you're not expressive and we need to talk about it. For withdrawers, that's too much. They want to keep the peace. So I'm not going to go there. But it's important to understand that both of them are underneath they have fears and longings that are not being met. So to your question of how do you deal with a partner who's not expressive, um, is one, I validate it for yourself. It's a hard place to be in. I mean, I can't imagine to be with somebody that I love and yet I don't feel like I can express certain things to them. So that's definitely a very difficult place to be in. And the second level that I think about, so that's first level of validate it for yourself. It is a hard place to be in. And then the second level is really to go to them. I really holding an attachment framework says two people that love each other, there's always room for repair. There's always room because it's hard to carry the heart alone for a long time. And this is what we see in our work. You have, there's this idea of a tired, angry pursuer who has tried and tried all the skills they learn. They go on Google and read how to make their partner talk, and the partner is not saying anything. And you just shut down and get hurt. And all of a sudden, after years, the marriage is not moving anywhere. And so I really encourage my partners to have these conversations, and I encourage, again, be curious. Hey, because it's important to remember that it's hard to make the other person do what we want them to do. And so bringing it in a curious stance, I found it to be helpful. I noticed that, when I attempt to say these things, or when I attempt to have a chit chat with you, a small talk with you, maybe you seem not interested. I'm really curious. This leaves me feel a certain way. Name whatever you feel, and then take it from there. And if it's still not working, then I'll suggest professional help, because at that point it's a dance that you're in, and you're both stuck in a dance of you're trying to pursue, you're trying to make things better, you're trying to be heard, you're trying to know that you are important and you matter to this person, but they are not giving the same signals. And so it's hard when you keep trying and trying, and things don't work. So seeking professional help is important, but really starting with yourself and saying, this is how I feel this is how much energy I'm putting in, and it's not being reciprocated. Pendo, any other thoughts? You're on mute, Pendo.
Sorry, I said, I think you handled it very well. I don't have anything on that particular question.
Great. I feel like most of the questions are around the same theme of partners not being available or engaged, and the other partner is trying and trying, i.e. pursuing. These are all great questions. Others are thank you notes. Thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you for organizing this and putting this together. It has been very informative. Somebody says, my take home, I should be curious, build vocabulary on how to engage my partner, and it all starts with my micro skills. Please consider a series on these. Yes, thank you so much. Building micro skills and being more curious. I love it. I love it when people like these takeaway moments.
Absolutely. I like that. I have written a book that gives you a lot of micro skills, how to grow in forgiveness, how to grow in empathy, how to grow in calming your own self-emotional regulation. So that book is on Amazon, but it's also at Aristoc and most of the bookshops around. Someone has asked a question, Ronald, about what resources can we point people to? And I want to point out this guy called Adam Dorsey, The Data That Men Miss. He has a TEDx talk on YouTube that you can watch within minutes of getting off here. He says, and I don't know, I haven't looked up the research, but he says that when men are born, or male children are born, they're more sensitive emotionally than the females, more sensitive emotionally than the females. And that as we start to raise them, we just give us very strong negative message to men, very strong, about their vulnerable emotions, especially. We may allow them certain things like anger or whatnot, but then, the vulnerable emotions, the weakness, the crying, the ones where they seek comfort, we actually do not allow them. We say, no, do not ask. And so that is a form of trauma. He talks about this. And then he says, what happens to a guy when they've lived 20 years, not knowing how to ask for comfort, not knowing how to get their needs met, not knowing how to express what is going on inside. And I think that we are sitting on a time bomb. Recently, many of you know that recently we lost a prominent person to suicide, John Babirukamo. And he is a brother to a friend of mine. And it was really something that shook all of us, because I've listened to his brother Colin, for example, saying, what signs did we miss? How did we miss these signs? But we didn't miss just John's signs. We are missing the signs of many, many men who are deeply depressed, who are deeply hurting, who for decades have been robbed of the opportunity to express their need for attachment, their need for comfort, their need for solace and, just pleasure and connection. And this is one of the things that prompted us to put together this webinar, to say that this thing that we are doing, when you tell a child, a boy child, don't cry, but when a girl child cries, you hold her and you tell her it's okay, that this is a huge disservice. I haven't done the research, but from what I am seeing from just the clinical therapeutic experience of 5 years, I see that we are doing a terrible, terrible disservice to our boy children, to our men. And now the women are finding that they're struggling with these people who cannot express emotionally. What I'm saying, please be patient. It's taken decades of breaking them. It's going to take some time to grow them. And you're probably going to need professional assistance in this job. I know that we want to do it ourselves. Our culture is, suck it up, do it yourself. Let's be stoic. But I think the more effective thing that I have seen is getting professional help for your man, for your brother, for your father. And yeah, all this alcohol, whatnot that you're seeing those are just symptoms of the breaking that happened a long time ago.
That's it. Thanks, Pendo. I agree. As we wind up, it's important for us to remember that, like Pendo said, these are generational ways and belief systems we've learned of how to be and how to show up. And some of these we saw them in our families of origin. Some of them we picked them on as we grew and developed in our teenage years and adult years. But one key important thing to note is that when you deeply care about somebody and you want them to do well, you are really going to get on the journey. I call it the ARE bus. So key thing is start with yourself. Notice, how am I really showing up? The questionnaire, Pendo is going to share the slides from Tina. I encourage everybody, some of my friends know that I talk about this a lot, even outside of my professional work. But notice, how am I even showing up to my partner, right? And then start with yourselves. Be more curious. I think somebody also hit it here. Be more curious, and in whatever you do, find your empathy, because I think it's very quick to throw judgments and fall into the cultural narratives of men don't do these things, or men don't show emotions, or men are not supposed to show emotions. But as a man, I can tell you that there are men who actually want to be vulnerable, but we don't feel safe in a culture that says, oh, this is for women, right? But then yet we're expected to be with these women. So it sounds like counterculture to say don't be emotional, but then you're expected to be with somebody who is emotional. How does that work? It does not work. And so, starting with yourself, some of your parents, think about how you're raising your boys and girls. For me, it didn't take time for me to learn that it's not safe to be emotional as a child. Nobody ever told me that, but the only thing I remember was whenever I cried, I'd get a beating or a slap, and whenever my sisters cried, they would get a hug. So I just internalized that myself. So some of the ways that we show up to our children, they're doing this. So it's, be patient with ourselves. It's going to take generations, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Find your empathy, whenever you want to be mad at your spouse for not engaging, have some empathy for them, because they don't have a template probably. And so you going hard at them is going to make things probably worse. Have some empathy for them, empathy for yourself. Be more curious, and be patient. That's it from me, Pendo. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. This is fun. I wish I could see everyone on this webinar.
I know. I failed to convert it into a meeting. But thank you so much, Ronald. I just love that we're doing all this work together. And thank you for bringing the research side and also the training side. For those of you that don't know, one of the interventions for rebuilding families, attachment bonds, and all that is called emotionally focused therapy. Last year, with Ronald's leadership, we were able to get here a training of emotionally focused therapy to 80 therapists from Uganda and Kenya. This year, we had second level training for a few therapists and first level training to Kenya, and we're going to continue. We're going to continue doing this so that you can go to somebody who is well versed with this attachment language and attachment intervention, because it is a critical thing. And anything worth doing, we cannot do alone. Ronald cannot do it alone. I cannot do it alone. We need an army. And we don't only need professionals, we need all of you. So when we have these webinars, please come, please continue to ask the questions. You guys have done so good. You've given us great questions. I'm going to try and go through the questions maybe tomorrow over the weekend and see that we reply to all of them, and also give you Dr. Tina's slides. So all those that registered, at least you'll be able to get that. When you receive them, please share with other people. So I see you all as partners. Like Ronald says, if we cannot save our generation, at least let us save the generation that comes after us. But let us build strong families here in Uganda. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Pendo. Pendo, is there a way to put my email in the chat for those that want to reach out to continue this conversation? I'm so thankful that you all came. This is not a conversation
Oh,
that
Ronald, are you not
many of you
able to
would have
chat?
to. I'm not able to. My messages go directly to you. But
Oh,
yeah, that's my email. Pendo's gonna put it in the chat or share it with you. Reach
yeah.
out. If you know Pendo, you'll know me. You
Okay.
know how to get me.
Ronald, please tell me, because I can't remember your email off the top of my head.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
ASII
Mm-hmm.
M
Asimwe.
004.
Oh,
So it's Asim.
Asim 00.
Yeah. Asim 004 at umn.edu.
Okay. Can you see it? Oh, I said edu.
Yes.
Ed. Sorry.
Edu. Yeah. That's it.
At umn.edu.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And you all have mine. Pendogalukande at gmail.com. So sorry that chat was disabled. I didn't realize that, but now I see all the messages here. Thank you. Thank you so much. Would love to continue the conversation. I hear you, attachment. Thank you, Pendo and Ronald. Thank you for organizing. Any chance of another related? Yes, we will have other related webinars. This is fantastic. Amen. There's always room for repair, figuring it out, and possibilities of a way forward. These are great messages. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Okay, bye-bye.